The Philadelphia Eagles got a massive win on Thursday Night Football to take first place in the NFC East at 8-2. Stock up, stock down, coming your way right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, welcome in. It's the Locked On Eagles podcast. I'm Louis DiBiase, joined as always by Gino Camilleri. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. We are brought to you by Hillsdale College. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost and it's easy to get started. We continue to recap a big, dominant win for the Philadelphia Eagles on Thursday Night Football over the Washington Commanders to win 6 straight now at 8-2, sole possession of first place in the NFC East. They are the 2 seed right now in the entire NFC and one of, if not the hottest teams in football, Gino. And I know you look at Sunday and the Lions won again, but I think you're starting to see the NFL right now like as close as it's ever been as a league. But at the same time, you are starting to see like who the great teams are, like the true contenders are emerging. The Lions, of course, have been that team. The same with the Chiefs. I think you're starting to see that with like the Buffalo Bills. I think Thursday night showed the Philadelphia Eagles are in that category for sure. There's only probably like 4 or 5 teams I'd put there right now, but I think the Eagles showed on Thursday. They're kind of showing greatness, and I don't think even in a close league, everybody's doing that are playoff contenders.
After Sunday, I'm still going to give the crown to the Detroit Lions, man. They can just put up points at will. But at the same time, I get real excited at the opportunity that if that was going to play out, the Eagles versus Lions, it would be a heck of a matchup, man.
I mean, King Kong versus Godzilla, man. Those rosters are stacked.
I get, like, I'm starting to salivate about the idea of, like, Quinyon Mitchell versus Amon-Ra St. Brown or like a Jameson Williams.
Cooper DeJean versus Jameson Williams.
That would be fun. You get the test of Jared Goff, who almost has that connectivity to Philadelphia because of Carson Wentz and how he almost was a Philadelphia Eagles quarterback a little bit. So there's that little bit of storytelling. But at the same time, Lou, this Eagles team, they've done enough out of, I would say, the top 10 teams in the league right now to give me enough positivity and enough positive takeaways out of all their games to say that on any given Sunday, they can win against anybody in the National Football League. Buffalo right now, I would say, is probably the hottest team coming off of that win against the Chiefs. And at the same time, the Chiefs were without a loss. Now they have a loss. Parity is at its highest that it's ever been when it comes to the National Football League. And the Eagles, why not? Why can't it be them, Lou?
No, I think, again, the entire NFL is very close right now, and there are so many teams that have a shot still to make the postseason in both conferences. But yeah, I think teams are starting to get going where they're showing greatness. And I think the Eagles, after Thursday's game, they belong in that tier with the Lions, with the Chiefs, with the Bills. I'd probably put Baltimore there, even though they've been a little more up and down than those other teams, and maybe even Pittsburgh.
I was going to say, that's the one wild card team where their defense is really good, man. Their defense can, and their offense can't score.
You're starting to learn who teams are, and I think the Eagles are a legitimate Super Bowl contender for sure. That was a big win. And you know, the good thing about that game was that wasn't even really an amazing performance from Jalen Hurts. Like, I don't think it was one of his worst games of the year by far. In the clutch, I thought he made some huge plays, especially that run where he dives from the pylon. After starting 0 for 2 against the blitz and 2 sacks, he finished the game 8 for 8 against the blitz for 109 yards. If that's the floor game for Jalen Hurts the rest of the way, like if that's a bad Jalen Hurts game, considering what Saquon Barkley and the offensive line did and are going to be able to do every single week, you can win a championship because you're going to get elite Hurts performances as we've seen for the last month and a half. As long as you're not getting like the Hurts from Tampa earlier this year, if that Washington game is the floor now for Jalen where he's not turning the ball over, I'll take that. And they could even still beat the Lions in that kind of situation because Jared Goff's had a lot of games like that too.
I think that is the key, Lou. The more and more I've watched the NFL outside of the Eagles, and it was a really good opportunity, obviously, playing on Thursday to kind of sit back and look at the landscape on Sunday. I look at the Chiefs, man. Look at Pat Mahomes, second play of the game. He throws an interception. Is that the difference between beating the Buffalo Bills and not beating the Buffalo Bills? It very well could have been. Jordan Love threw an interception in that game, which almost cost them against the Chicago Bears. Jalen Hurts playing turnover-free football, that's something not a lot of quarterbacks around the National Football League, even the best, are doing right now.
If you're clutch and you play mistake-free football and you can run, and that's your floor. Again, that's not all Jalen Hurts is going to be game after game. He's going to have some Cincinnati Bengal matchup-like performances again, for sure. This wasn't really a great Hurts game. But again, if that's the floor where he's making those plays in the second half and he's playing mistake-free football, again, I think there were times he missed some open players, didn't see the field all that well, looked a little bit stiff and out of rhythm early in the game. Also think, by the way, he was completely concussed for a majority of this football game.
Yes.
But again, the Eagles are so good right now in every other area that if you get a 2021 Hurts game from time to time, they're going to be okay. They're set up. Detroit is the only team, I think, outside of the Eagles that can afford their quarterback to have those kind of games, I'd say.
And before this, Lou, he was having statistically one of the best runs of his career.
He put himself back in the MVP, even though he's not a favorite. He put himself back in the MVP conversation.
And I would say just in the conversation of getting back to the level that you and I and a lot of people probably around Philadelphia wanted to see from him. And that's exactly where walking out of that game on Thursday, I don't feel any worse. I don't feel any better. I feel still the same, that if Jalen Hurts doesn't turn the ball over and he can run as explosive as he did in that game on Thursday, and he could still hit the shots downfield, which we know he can because he's done it time and time again, I'm fine with the performance that Jalen Hurts had because he did not turn the ball over. That has to be the floor for Jalen. If we can walk out of a game with no turnovers, no interception, no stupid fumble like you did in Dallas and almost kept that team in the game for a little bit, you're going to have a chance. Look at the first 4 games of the year, Lou. 2-2 because Jalen turned it over multiple times in every single game. Why have they been on this 6-game win streak since the bye week? Jalen Hurts said at the bye it was, quote unquote, the most efficient bye week he's ever had. Well, this is one of the more efficient stretches of play that Jalen Hurts has had, and that's what you need because your defense has been playing lights out. Your offensive playmakers, I would say specifically Saquon Barkley, they just need a fighter's chance and be on the football field to pop one at any given time. Downfield, all it takes is one-on-one for Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown to get open. But turning the ball over and taking away opportunities from your high-profile offense to do that, that's where you're going to cost yourself late in the season. So this is really good to dial yourself in now, even though you look at that box score, you're like, okay, threw a little over 200 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. But look at what he did against the blitz. I think that's probably the biggest takeaway for me.
And with his legs, man. Again, this roster is never going to take Jalen Hurts out of a game, right? Jalen Hurts could take this roster out of a game if he's playing like he did the first month of the year. But even in the postseason, if you get this Jalen Hurts, there's still going to be a chance in that game at the end that Jalen Hurts can still go win you the football game. And I trust him more than a lot of quarterbacks that are going to be in the postseason, that when push comes to shove, even in a game like Thursday where he's a little off, he's still going to pull off big plays in the clutch. And you do have to give him credit for that. He did do that Thursday in the second half, I thought.
Let's just play a quick game right now, Lou, of Jalen Hurts versus a wild card team and their quarterback. Let's just go down the list. We just saw it with Jaden Daniels. I would expect you would take him again in that matchup.
Yeah, I would.
Then you got Jordan Love. We've already seen him once. I would expect you would take him in that matchup again. Sam Darnold. I would expect you to take him in that matchup
I take him over Jared Goff, Gino. If it's a bloodbath Eagles-Lions game and it's gross and it's 20-20, who do I think is going to make one extra play in the second half if both are struggling, Goff or Hurts? It's Jalen Hurts.
I'm with you, man. And the teams in the NFC West right now, that is a whole cluster. Who knows what's going on with San Francisco, Seattle. You can't tell who they are week to week.
Dude, I don't even know if the Niners are going to be in the postseason. Everybody in the West is within a game.
Here's one for you, Lou. And I know it would be tough because both teams would probably win their division. But let's say you get into a second-round matchup with Kyler Murray. The way he's been playing, I think that would probably be one of the more fun games we would see between two quarterbacks in this playoffs.
Yeah, I think the Eagles have a huge advantage at quarterback in the NFC playoffs, even though there's a lot of good teams in this conference.
Oh, yeah, and that was no disrespect to those guys.
No,
I just trust Jalen Hurts and where he's at.
Thank God
right
they're
now.
not in the AFC with the way Justin Herbert looks on top of Allen, Lamar, Mahomes. I mean, that conference is just loaded with stud quarterbacks. In the NFC, I trust Hurts in the clutch, even in a Thursday night kind of game, over maybe anybody. And the mobility is a huge part of it, but yeah, I think I might be there, that he's the most clutch quarterback that the playoff picture has in that conference.
But if he throws an interception, if he fumbles the ball in a big moment.
Yeah, if you get early Hurts from this year, then that's a different conversation.
I mean, even in the Super Bowl when he played damn near perfect, man, it was the one fumble that really cost them at the end of the day. You have to be perfect. You have to be. And look across the pot. Dude, Josh Allen being as perfect as he is, Lou. When you have a legitimate, I don't know what you want to call, like Terminator playing quarterback, and he doesn't turn the ball over, that's who you're probably going to have to play against if you get to a Super Bowl. So you have to be efficient. You have to trust your playmakers, trust your offensive line, and trust your coaches. Because frankly, Lou, the last 6 weeks, I think they've put you in a pretty good position to succeed.
I think it was I don't think it was a stock up or stock down game for.
Yeah, you won with him.
Yeah,
yep.
I think he was fine, and yeah, I think you're going to get some games like that, but you're going to get a lot of elite performance as well from Jalen Hurts. So I've kind of come to accept. I'm at the acceptance point of like, yeah, like this is kind of what you have a quarterback, and I'll take it for how good this team looks. And the run game was incredible on Thursday night. That was the reason they won that football game. Saquon Barkley and the offensive line. We'll talk about them, a shining young defense, and more. Stock up coming your way right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. This episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, they're offering more than 40 free online courses, including just a couple courses I can list for you. Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire. I know our bros out there think about the Roman Empire all the time. All that and more over at Hillsdale. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon.
This episode is also brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. If you don't know what PrizePicks is by now, it's the best place to get real money sports action with daily fantasy sports, in that you only have to choose more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my pick hits, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. And if you sign up today, you're going to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. So if you're going to be watching Sunday Night Football and you think Jalen Hurts is going to have more than 1.5 passing touchdowns, or A.J. Brown is going to have more than 79.5 receiving yards, go over to PrizePicks today to get in on the action. And all you have to do is download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Time now for Stock Up after a big win for the Eagles on Thursday Night Football over the Washington Commanders, and I don't even really think we're going to have much stock down. It was, again, another really just strong performance from the Eagles on offense, on defense, even on special teams. But, we do have to shout out the run game of all these stock ups, right? Because that was the reason you won this football game. Saquon Barkley, 198 yards from scrimmage, 3 plays of 20-plus yards, including a 40-plus yard reception. The offensive line was cooking in the second half. In fact, 4 of the 5 highest graded Eagles from PFF were linemen. It was Dickerson, Mailata, Juergens, and Lane Johnson. We've had elite run games in the past for the Eagles, like 2021, 2022, back in the McCoy Vick days. They've had a lot of good run offenses, but this might be one of, if not the best one they've ever had. I mean, it's such a perfect marriage between an elite generational running back, an elite offensive line, and maybe the best offensive line coach of all time. I mean, when you have this in your bag, that's why you heard me kind of have a little more acceptance in segment 1 for these kind of Jalen Hurts games, because we use the analogy all the time. You have the Hulk that ran, like, you don't want to use the green monster all the time, but if you're in a pinch and you need it, you have it at the call. And Thursday was a rock fight and you needed it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad they stuck with the plan and didn't get pass heavy, because sometimes Sirianni and Moore, if the run game's not working early, they can abandon that, Gino. And I really like that they kept chugging and they eventually wore the Commanders down and big plays broke free.
It's funny because I saw after that game, somebody put up a statistical comparison between Saquon, DeAndre Swift, Miles Sanders, and you're going to look at the stats and say, well, he's kind of on par with those guys, if not a little bit ahead of them. But if you watch the games and seen those three and
close.
Watch the tape, it's not even comparable.
Gino, those guys didn't create like Saquon. Like, that's the thing, is he's creating for the offensive line as much as it's the other way around. I don't think that was the case with Sanders or Swift.
And that's why you truly you can't box score scout in this league, man. You have to go inside the lines and quite literally run in between the tackles to see what's going on. And it's Saquon getting 1 yard, 3 yards, 2 yards, then boom, huge 40-yard reception, right?
Yep.
And then he goes for 1 yard.
That
he
spin
goes for
run
5
he had
yards
where there was nothing there, and he spins out of it to get more yards on the outside.
Then he picks up a first down when you need it on 3rd and long, and then he pops another big run. That's just who he is, and you have to continue to let him carry the rock. I think back to the 2017 season, Lou, and this is going very, very early on. It was week 2 against the Chiefs.
Yeah.
They gave LeGarrette Blount 2 carries that entire game. And then after that, people were like, hey, maybe if we lean into the run game a little bit, we could be a pretty effective offense. What their bread and butter was that year, Lou, was the ability to kind of grind the clock out with that 3-back set, hit the big plays when they needed them. And it came on the back of LeGarrette Blount, Jay Ajayi, and Corey Clement. And now you have all 3 of those guys wrapped into one in Saquon Barkley. And he does more than any of the guys that we have seen since LaShawn McCoy.
Because, wouldn't you agree that I don't think the Eagles' offensive line was winning a lot of their matchups in the first half? I think Saquon was elevating a lot early.
Probably the worst game I've seen from the offensive line this season.
And they dominated in the second half. They eventually wore him down, and like Cam Juergens had some incredible blocks in the second level. So did Dickerson, and Mailata is just maybe one of the most underrated players in football. But yeah, like I think Barkley had to carry them early, and Swift and Sanders both had kind of like a reputation for being elusive and can cut quick on a dime, but I don't think either one, like when it comes to their yards over expectation, they were never very impressive numbers. Like Saquon you're winning because he should be in the MVP conversation. He's not going to win it. It's a quarterback award, but he's what McCaffrey was for the Niners last year.
Yeah, if you're watching the game and you see the impact and you see the attention that the defense has to pay to him and how much respect they give him and how much it opens up the rest of the offense for you, that's why you sign this player. And I think maybe the one aspect of Saquon that we probably haven't touched on enough is helping the evolution of Jalen Hurts as a progression passer. And a lot of the reason why I give pushback on people that say, oh, Jalen doesn't see the field, he can't go through his progressions. Well, that play where he hits Saquon Barkley on the check down, like that's his last progression, right? Like he has to go through his reads and he has somebody he trusts that, hey, let me just hit the check down, live to see another day.
Back in the day, he'd run that, Gino.
He'll probably pick up at least 2 to 3, if not 40 yards per reception.
Yeah.
That's huge for the development of Jalen Hurts and just the confidence for him as well to know that when everything is wrong, I can break the glass, pull the fire alarm, and here comes the Hulk, like we said, man. Like he'll come out of nowhere, that's the alarm, and he'll break a big run for you.
He's so clutch. He actually right now running backs with the most rushing yards per game in the second half or overtime by season. Saquon Barkley this year, that's number 1 at 73.8 yards per game in the second half. Like he's been unbelievably clutch. The Eagles heading into Sunday led the league in 10-plus play drives. They are just grinding defenses down. And that's when the big explosive plays happen because Washington was exhausted, man. Like that's why you got to commit to it. And you can't, like that was the blueprint we knew heading into the game. Washington gave up the 4th most rushing yards in football. And again, I'm a pass first guy. I think everybody that listens and watches the show knows that, but that's got to be the recipe sometimes. That game called for it. And again, like why I love that win so much is the Eagles can win any kind of game. If it's a shootout with Joe Burrow and they have to throw, they can win that game. If it's a rock fight with a division rival to get first place, they can win that game. And I can't believe Howie Roseman got Saquon Barkley. I mean, it's like, how else can you say it? It might be one of his best. It's kind of funny and ironic that one of Howie's greatest moves he's ever made was signing a running back because that's just not what he does.
It's the evolution of the thought process behind said player, right? And a lot to the degree of what I was saying with you can't box score scout. You have to watch the tape to see how good Saquon Barkley is. Well, you can't just say he's a running back because he's so much more than he is your offensive weapon. Like we said, when this signing was made, he is so much more than just a one-dimensional back. He can do everything for you, Lou, and he has been your lifeboat. How many times has this guy saved your season so far? And you're
so many times.
You're a drop away from beating Atlanta if he catches that ball, man. Like you could have one loss on the season realistically. He's everything and then some, and a lot of it is the offensive line too, man. Like as bad as they were in that first half, when they get punched in the face, they take it personal. They truly take it personal and want to improve. And they did that in the second half, man. And that, I still think Washington's front is a lot better than the statistics have given them.
Very
like,
underrated.
Dude, Deron Payne and Johnny Newton, man. Like, that's
Armstrong,
a really
they
good
this
interior.
Offseason's been good. They drafted Newton in the second round.
They made it really hard for the Eagles to get yards in the first half, man. They did a really good job. And then Nick Sirianni, the one thing he says, it's not who's tougher, it's who's tougher the longest, right? And the offensive line was way tougher, way longer. Those last couple drives of the game, they withered it away. And those are the drives you're going to have to lean on, Lou, when you're hosting playoff games and you get a lead and it's 20 degrees in Lincoln Financial Field. And let's say you're hosting, I don't know who would even be the last playoff team right now. Like, let's say you're hosting Minnesota, for example. Like, if you get a lead on that team, you're going to want to just milk that clock away, not give Sam Darnold more opportunities. That comes from the run game. Same thing with like a Jordan Love, like you did earlier in the season against Green Bay. Get that lead and just use the run game. But you can get leads because of the run, and you could kill games because of the run. And that's not the only pitch you have in your bag. It's not like you're all in on the run or you can't do anything.
No.
Which I kind of feel like Baltimore is getting back into that category once again, right, Lou? And
yeah.
The Eagles, they got many pitches in their bag, and it all stems from Saquon Barkley. He is the cog that makes this thing go.
And again, like props to Nick Sirianni, Kellen Moore, stock up to the coaches for sticking to that plan. And, Gino, before we take a break, like we got to give props to Nick Sirianni. Like we gave him a lot of flack. I wanted him fired after the Tampa loss. Not going to lie, at 2-2 heading into the bye. Thought I've seen enough. Still have my issues with him as the head coach based on what I want. But you got to give him his flowers. I mean, what he has done in this 6-game win streak, having his team fix almost every thing that was wrong with them as the reason they were 2-2 and collapsed last year. One thing that even me and you have said, even in our criticism, that's never wavered, is he's never lost the locker room. They've always fought for him, and that this win streak is so apparent of that. So you got to give credit to the head coach.
We've crushed Nick Sirianni with our words, man, and
deservedly so.
I think rightfully so at the time. Yeah, without a doubt. And
he deserves praise now, though. You
really see how people are when the seat is the hottest, when the pressure cooker starts to boil a little bit. He
cooled it down.
Right?
He put ice water on it.
Outside of last year, he's done that multiple times. I think you look at his first season when he was able to do that, sitting at 2-5, get them in a position to get into a playoff battle. And then in 2022, he just kind of got the ship on course and never wavered outside of last year, which I think, now that we're digging more and more into it, probably lied a lot on outside factors that weren't just him, that I think are unfairly blamed on him now. But rightfully so, he has done everything that the 53 guys in the locker room have asked of him. The leaders went to him, said they need to change their offense, lean into the run game. That's exactly what they did. You get this hands-off approach on the defense where Vic Fangio is your, let's say now, Lou, like you might have found your Steve Spagnuolo, hopefully, that can just be here and not go anywhere, and your defense is
your
going
old
to be
man
taken
that's not
care
going to
of.
be a head coach again, and you just got him forever.
Yeah, where's Fangio? Yeah, he's up in the booth. You know where he is.
Yeah.
He's been there for 6 seasons. Like, that's what you need from him. And I think the more we see this offense continue to flourish, I think the more Nick Sirianni has to be given credit too, because it's him and Kellen Moore. Like, we know it is. It's not just Kellen. You can't call it either way. It's him and Kellen's offense. And the offense has been doing well, man. Like, they are on pace to just score 30 points every single week. And that's with having some dumb mistakes in the first half and still not scoring on your first drive and your kicker missing multiple kicks. This is a very good team that is coached well now, and like, they're really good tackling, and the penalties are still one thing I would like to see cleaned up more, but that's getting really nitpicky with your coaching staff. I think they've come ready to play, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They're never needing to get going, and even on the offensive side of the ball when they're not going, they continue to keep their tires on the road, trust the path, and that's what the one thing that you see. You don't see this team ever quitting. Like, if you watch that Jacksonville against Detroit game yesterday, it's like these guys are not playing for Doug Peterson anymore.
No.
And I don't think we've ever seen that. Even last year when they were broken, Lou, I don't think they lost the trust in Nick. I think they just lost the confidence that they could win those games.
I think they were all just mentally exhausted and shot. Yeah. No, I agree with that. And you got to give him props. He deserves a lot of criticism at times, and he deserves a lot of praise right now for what he's got the Eagles doing at 8-2. But the defense has been a main reason for the turnaround. We'll get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Get ready to tackle the NFL action right now with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with, again, $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So just take the anytime touchdown for Jalen Hurts rushing at FanDuel.com. You'll get $150 back in bonus bets. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, wrapping up the show. Continuing stock up, Gino, because we got to talk about the Eagles defense. That might be the best in football right now, the way they're playing. I mean, no one on this roster on defense I can complain about on the defensive line, at linebacker, in the secondary. Like, when was the last time an Eagles defense was this harmonic, right? Where the coach and all three levels are so in sync. I mean, Vic Fangio should win like Assistant of the Year. Is that even an award? If it's not, I mean, Fangio would have a really good case considering how young and how much change this defense has in 2024, Gino, for them to be playing the way they are. It's unbelievable. And the best thing is they have a staple, like a pillar star on all three levels. Jalen Carter, Zack Baun, and Quinyon Mitchell were unbelievable Thursday. When you have at least one stud in every area of the field, you're going to win a lot of football games.
That's such a great point. I think about this all the time, actually, because back when Ray Lewis and all those guys were on the Ravens, they used to put that graphic up before the game, like guys to watch, and it would always be like the three studs on defense. And it's like, great point. When is the last time the Eagles have had three guys that are all pro caliber players? And I think multiple all pro caliber players at every single level right now. I think both linebackers, the way that they're playing, Zack Baun definitely more than Nakobe, but Nakobe, I mean, that's a Pro Bowl season that he's putting together, if not a second or third team All-Pro, maybe an honorable mention. Cooper DeJean could potentially be in the conversation for Defensive Rookie of the Year if he's played the whole season without having that injury in the first 4 games. So when you put that graphic up, guys to watch for the Eagles, it's those 3 stars, man. It's Jalen, it's Zach in the middle, it's Quinyon Mitchell on the backside, it's even Cooper DeJean at times. And then the role players, stars. I mean, they're not just normal role players for you. Like, they're all very good. Like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, unbelievable. Reed Blankenship,
another underappreciated,
man.
You know who's underappreciated from that game on Thursday? I think 2 players up front, Jordan Davis, Josh Sweat. I mean, those 2 were having dominant performances. Nolan Smith and Brandon Graham both get a sack. Yeah, I mean, I think 2022 is the closest where just everybody's balling on defense. But as good as TJ Edwards and Kazir White, as good as they were that year, like, they weren't playing at the all-pro level of Zack Baun.
No, Zack Baun is playing at like a top linebacker.
He's playing like Fred Warner right now.
It's saying a lot, but within the scheme, I think he is getting the best out of his traits, and that's really what you need from your defensive play caller. And I don't really know what the hell happened in Miami last year, but the fact that those guys wouldn't to buy into whatever Fangio is selling, because the Eagles clearly have bought in.
He's perfect for this defense because they're so young and will buy in. I think this was the right call.
And it's not that he makes them play in a robotic fashion almost. When Chip back in the day, it was like, you're just like putting these guys in there like cogs in a machine. You're seeing their personality on the field, which is unleashing a higher level of, like, Jalen Carter being a second away from snapping at any given time, like being that one sort of crazy person on your defensive line,
you got to
makes him that much better. Like, it makes him that much better, dude.
Jalen Carter had an insane night on Thursday. And again, it's not going to show up sexy in the box score, although he did have a career high 7 tackles. I mean, how good he was against the run. He got Josh Sweat that first sack with just blowing up his one-on-one matchup.
Dude, he's better against the run than he is as a pass rusher, and I think that's saying a lot, dude. Like,
he's one of the best run-stopping tackles in the league. He's better than Jordan Davis at it.
Like, that play he had in the backfield where he just knifes through the B gap, and I don't know if that was on Jaden Daniels or one of their playmakers, but, like, the way he, like, tackled and just was able to stay athletically on his feet and keep hold of the tackle, man. He's so good. And
he played every snap. I mean, that's so impressive. He played every snap.
That's what you need, right? Like, we were asking who was going to be the guy to step up for Fletcher Cox, who was your Iron Man at that position for the longest time. I think you got somebody who might be a little bit better.
He hit a wall last year at this time of the season too, Gino, so his conditioning is a lot better.
And Jordan Davis, man, he's never going to be the guy in the box score that shows up, but he allows everybody else to do their job. Zack Baun isn't as good as he is without him. Reed Blankenship and Chauncey can't fly downhill the way that they are without Jordan Davis. And even the times he's not making the plays, but then he gets off of a block and he comes stumbling across the line and you see him get down the line as quickly as he does for a guy that big, you're saying, oh, okay, those are the flashes that I do want to see.
That 3rd and 1 play, Gino, when they stopped them on 3 straight short yardage situations against the run, Davis blew up that 3rd down play. You mentioned how, like, kind of making the Ravens analogy, he's like your Haloti Ngata. There were like 5-6 studs around Haloti Ngata, and he was just the meat and potatoes in the middle. Like, again, if this is all Jordan Davis is, that's still a damn important role player.
And to have him and Jalen Carter there, like that 1-2 punch, man, that's probably the most promising part of that all, because you know that it's those two. We're going to construct everything, run and pass around them. And then it kind of does turn into like a plug and play almost, where regardless of scheme, we can kind of fill these guys into what we need. And I think you're seeing that at the edge position. They kind of just have a buffet of different guys.
It's a total committee, dude.
And it's a total committee approach, because we continue to go back to it. Your alphas are in the middle. Your 2 guys that dominate, win their one-on-ones. And Jordan Davis, him against double teams, like, he just doesn't get moved. He does not get moved. His ability to anchor is so good. The role players are coming up big. I don't think we can say enough about even like the last guy in the rotation, man. Like Slay isn't getting talked about enough at 34 years old. And Isaiah Rodgers, when he comes onto the field, has been exceptional. And even Avonte Maddox didn't have a dumb play on Thursday when he was on the field, which is promising. But the defense, why I have so much confidence beating any team with this Eagles outlook in 2024 is because of the defense. I know the offense is very good, but this defense is elite in multiple spots, can take away your fastball as an offense. We've seen that time and time again. Teams that run the ball well, the Eagles are able to stop the run. Jaden Daniels was a prolific passer, looked pedestrian throwing to his wide receivers, 4 total receptions to wide receivers all day long. Vic Fangio, like I said in the second segment, you want him to be your Steve Spagnuolo. You want him, if Nick Sirianni is going to be the guy long-term and you might get this turnover at the offensive play caller position, you at least want continuity at the defensive spot. And Fangio right now, if things stay the way they do, I don't see him going anywhere for the long haul, Lou, because this defense is kind of built to what he wants to do and vice versa.
They just didn't settle on defense like they normally do. Sometimes they're saying, we're going to punt on safety this year. We're going to punt on corner. You could say kind of they punted on linebacker and I don't want to say they got lucky, but they did go value bargain bin shopping with Zack Baun, and it did work out, but they have Nakobe Dean, who they invested a lot in. They just didn't do the Band-Aid move a lot this year. And I think that's why it's working out. And that's why you're elite in all 3 levels. I mean, even for me, Quinyon Mitchell was my favorite player in this draft class, and one of my favorite players coming out of a draft ever. I even didn't think he was going to be this good, Gino. Like, he's been amazing this year against like Jamar Chase, only 2 catches for 15 yards. Brian Thomas, no catches on Quinyon. CeeDee Lamb, only 1 catch for 5 yards. He's been on an insane run, but to do what he did against Terry McLaurin, who faced him 80% of his passing snaps, and to get 0 catches and only 1 target. Say what you will about him not winning Rookie of the Year. I don't even care about that anymore. Quinyon Mitchell might make the All-Pro team if he continues what he's doing right now.
Do you remember that time where Amari Cooper was Dallas Cowboy, and every time the Eagles played Amari, it was like, who is going to cover
If I had to
guy?
see that Michael Jacquet graphic one more time against the Dallas
yeah, where he got absolutely dogged, right? And then you're like, oh, who's going to cover CeeDee Lamb now that he's there? Who's going to cover Terry McLaurin? Who's going to cover Malik Neighbors? Quinyon Mitchell, Quinyon Amobe, lockdown, anybody you want because of many things, Lou. And I think the one thing above all when it comes to what we don't see when it comes to Quinyon is the mental makeup of that kid. The guy is built of concrete in the best way.
Position,
you can never phase him. You cannot get in his head. When he is out of position, it's because he's slipping on the field. It's not because he had bad footwork or anything.
And then he has elite makeup speed to recover, so who cares?
Dude,
he's fine.
He is what you want if you went into a lab and said, build me a prototypical NFL caliber star cornerback. Maybe give him 2 more inches to hit like a Jalen Ramsey type of height.
Sure.
But he tackles exceptionally well. He plays zone and man exceptionally well. He does not falter when it comes to a mental standpoint.
And do you know how hard that is, to do at corner? That is such a hard position to play. Year 1 to do what he's doing against all these elite receivers. I'm glad it's finally getting some national attention. Thankfully, that primetime game against an elite receiver did a lot for Quinyon, so he's on the map a little bit more. But he's been doing this all year, and it's truly unbelievable.
He's going to probably win Defensive Rookie of the Year if Jared Verse cools off statistically.
And what does he need? 2 picks, do you think? Like, how many picks does he need in the last 7 games? 2?
Marshawn Lattimore had that crazy year when he won it, where he kind of just went off, and Tariq Woolen numbers, if you want to get around there, like he's not going to hit those crazy numbers, but I mean, 2 or 3 would put him into the conversation, right? Because then you could put up the graphic, like in the final games he had. I mean, even if they come against Sauce had 2 as well.
Only had 2 when he won it, so maybe 2 gets it done.
Like, what if it's against the Panthers? He gets both against the Panthers, but then that puts him into consideration, and then people see the graphic and they're like, "Oh, he did that against Jamar Chase. He did that against Terry
is more
McLaurin."
impressive than getting picks.
Yeah.
That's what annoys me is if.
But for like national people, I'm saying like if you want to get
I
eyes
know.
to it,
and that's
like,
what
you got to do.
That's what bugs me is he has to get the picks to win this award. But what he's doing right now, where teams aren't even throwing his way
Dude,
to get picks, that's more impressive to me.
They're not, and you can't throw at Cooper DeJean either. You can't throw at Darius Slay either.
No.
You got to throw at Chauncey when you get him in coverage. You got to throw at Reed when you get him in coverage, because those other guys, talk about a committee, that's a three-headed dragon. Like those are three guys you can rely on and say, we are going, like I said, on the interior, Lou, like we're going to, with Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, plan everything around them and then move out. On the back end, it's who's their number 1, 2, 3 targets. We got our number 1, 2, 3 guys on our side, and we're confident those guys are going to win their matchup 9 out of 10 times. For Quinyon, it's 11 out of 10 times at this point for how freaking good he is. And to just know, and I know we're seeing it with Sauce Gardner right now, like that high-profile rookies and players that are good on their rookie contract. It could fizzle out a little bit, but I don't see that from a kid who went to Toledo, got picked ahead of a kid from Bama, is playing as good as that kid is from Bama, probably better, and is probably the best defensive back from this class so far. And I don't think that's an argument that you can argue out of.
I think we could change the conversation from Rookie of the Year to potentially him making a first or second team All-Pro. Like, I think he could legitimately do that.
Yeah, who's playing as good as him?
Right now, well, per Next Gen Stats, since week 6, Eagles corner Quinyon Mitchell has allowed 0.5 yards per coverage snap, the second fewest among corners. So if you're going based on that stat, only one player, and he leads the entire conference right now in force and completion rate. So there aren't many corners playing better than Q, maybe 1 or 2.
Give the guys respect, man. And I think a lot of it comes down to who they have as the defensive backs coach as well. Christian Parker is going to be a great defensive coordinator in one day, man.
Probably.
He is. I mean, he got Patrick Surtain to be the player that he was.
Yeah.
He got Quinyon Mitchell. He got Cooper DeJean. To say that it's just the player's responsibility for them to develop into the player that they become is totally false. And I think we're seeing that now more than ever, Lou. Why is the defense so good? It's taking a lot of things into account. It's taking the position coaches. It's taking the coordinators, got these guys in the right spot. It was your personnel director and Howie Roseman finding the guys that fit your defense. You talk about it all meshing well, and where I think the 2022 defense was kind of like, okay, we have great personnel and then a coordinator that if we just don't give him the actual nuclear codes, we can win.
Plan of all time and
we'll give him the fake nuclear code so he can't set off any of the bombs. That was kind of JG. Like with Fangio, I'm saying, oh, he's going to out-scheme like the best coordinator.
But that's what I was saying. It's like harmonious between the coaching staff and the personnel. Like, I don't think there's ever been this kind of marriage, even in 22.
No, I really don't. And on all 3 levels as well. To see it consistently even to where you can't like pinpoint one or the other and say, oh, you're not doing your job. You're not doing your job.
Like, who's regressing this year on the Eagles defense? Like, last year, young players were regressing on both sides of the ball. There's no young player maybe they're not taking a massive step, but everybody's on the up.
And that's what you needed. You couldn't allow stagnation when it came to development.
And that was happening last year.
And even some sort of regression was happening, right? Vic Fangio won't get the credit for what he's doing, but he maybe, outside of Saquon Barkley, is the one person you can directly point to, and probably outside of Howie, of course, for getting all these guys here. We get this is a like asterisk show where you could just put Howie Roseman did all of this and like put that after every show that we did.
Fair.
But I think Vic Fangio truly, from coming from Matt Patricia and Sean Desai, shows you why maybe going older at a coaching spot could give you the benefit of the doubt and be the reason why you win football games. And I think Nick Sirianni opened his eyes to that.
And maybe going younger personnel-wise on defense. Like, experience
funny how that works.
Like, experience shouldn't always be the priority. Sometimes if there's talent, you don't always need the experience if you have the right coaching, you got the right players. The Eagles right now are humming in all 3 phases and the coaching staff as well. 8-2, big win against the Washington Commanders on Thursday Night Football. We'll take another look at that matchup, and we'll move forward as we've still got 4 more shows for you this week right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch each and every day wherever you get the show. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. Thanks as always for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.